Hey everybody, my name's Parker, and in today's beginner's guide, we pay homage to our adorable and fierce friends by learning the fundamentals of the Pokémon Trading Card Game. To say the game mechanics are simple might be an understatement. After all, it was developed with an age rating of just 6 years old. Now, that being said, we'll take it nice and slow and cover the basics necessary to get you started. Each player begins the game with a deck of exactly 60 cards, consisting of various Pokemon, trainer, and basic energy cards. When constructing your deck, you're allowed up to 4 cards with the same name. Energy cards are the exception, as you can have as many of those as you'd like, which is a good thing because you'll need them to fuel your Pokemon. Speaking of, let's get familiar with the structure of a basic Pokemon card. In the top left corner, you'll find the Pokemon's stage. Marill is at the basic stage, which means that this is the starting stage of the Pokemon. Only basic Pokemon can be placed in the active zone or the bench zone, so it's essential to have plenty of these packed into your deck. The active zone is where you'll keep your Pokemon that's battling the Pokemon in your opponent's active zone. The bench is where you'll store up to 5 other Pokemon, which you may swap in if your active Pokemon is knocked out, or if you pay the retreat cost, but more on that later. All Pokemon have HP, or hit points, which can be found in the top right corner of the card. Marill has 70 HP, and once it's received damage equal to or in excess of this total, it'll be knocked out and placed in the player's discard pile, along with any energy cards or tools attached to it. The attacks that Pokemon are capable of performing are located in the center text box of the card. Just to the left of the attack name, you'll find the required energy cost to perform it. For example, for Marill to perform Bubble Drain and hit its opponent for 20 damage, it requires 1 water type energy and 1 other type of energy to be placed beneath it. The gray star symbol notates that any type of energy may be used to satisfy payment. Aside from the main attacks, many Pokemon also have an ability that can be triggered when the proper conditions are met. For example, Chien-Pao EX has an ability called Shivery Chill, which allows you to search your deck for 2 water type energies once per turn as long as it's in your active zone. Each Pokemon is associated with a certain type which will act as its unique characteristic. The different types of Pokemon are Grass, Fire, Water, Lightning, Fighting, Psychic, Dark, and Metal. While each Pokemon should leverage its type in battle, you also need to be aware of their weaknesses. In our example, Marill is a Water type and has a 2x weakness to Lightning type Pokemon. This information can be found on the lower left-hand side of the card. This weakness means that if Marill is dealt damage from a Lightning type attack, the total damage would be multiplied by 2. Resistance, if Marill had one, would refer to the type of Pokemon that it takes less damage from. For example, if your Pokemon has a -30 resistance to a fighting type attack, you would subtract 30 damage from the total of the incoming attack. If your active Pokemon has taken severe damage and you want to preserve it for later use, on your turn you may retreat it back to the bench. To do this, you must pay the associated energy cost, which can be found on the lower right-hand side of the card. Keep in mind that any damage or effects your Pokemon has endured will remain present, even once it's retreated to the bench. Azumarill is classified as a Stage 1 Pokemon because it's the first stage in Marill's evolution. This information will always be notated in the top left corner of the card, and will even show a small picture of the basic Pokemon it evolves from in the case that you need a visual reminder. To evolve a basic Pokemon, simply place the corresponding Stage 1 Pokemon on top of it. Any previous damage dealt to the basic Pokemon will be transferred to the Stage 1 Pokemon. Similarly, any attached energy cards or items will be retained and carry over to the newly evolved Pokemon. There are 4 different types of trainer cards that supplement your playstyle and synergize your deck. Each one is beneficial in its own way and either requires certain conditions to be met or gives you instruction on what you can do when the card is played. Supporter trainer cards will often function as card manipulation and allow you to draw cards, replace cards, or search your deck or discard pile for certain cards. Item trainer cards are utilized to heal, remove negative conditions, or even search your deck or discard pile for cards. Tool trainer cards can be attached to your Pokemon to give them added benefits while they're in play. Lastly, stadium cards are played onto the middle of the arena and affect both you and your opponent. Only 1 stadium card can be present on the field at a time, so if another one were to be played, the previous one would be discarded. Once you and a friend have shuffled your 60-card deck, it's time to flip a coin and decide who goes first. Once that's settled, Each player draws the top 7 cards of their deck. Because you must have a basic Pokemon to begin the game, if you don't draw one, you must perform a mulligan. To do so, show your opponent your entire hand, proving that you didn't draw a basic Pokemon, and then shuffle all 7 cards back into your deck. Repeat this process until you've drawn at least one basic Pokemon. Now that you have at least one basic Pokemon in hand, you'll choose one to begin the game as active and place it face down into the active zone. You may then place up to 5 other basic Pokemon face down into your bench. Lastly, take the top 6 cards of your deck and place them face down into your prize zone without looking at them. Each time you knock out an opponent's Pokemon, you'll draw one of these prize cards and add it to your hand. Once you and your opponent have completed all of the steps above, each of you will reveal the face down card in your active zone and all of the cards in your bench zones. Now you're ready for battle! Each turn consists of 3 main parts: draw, actions, and attack, in that order. Let's break down each of those sections one by one. At the start of your turn, even if you go first, you must draw a card. This ensures that each player is going through their deck at a proper pace and not stalling out the game. If at any point you can't draw a card at the beginning of your turn, you lose the game. There are many actions that can take place during your turn and don't require you to play them in any order or sequence. You may place a Pokemon in your bench zone, evolve a Pokemon, attach an energy card to a Pokemon, play a trainer card, retreat your active Pokemon, and use your Pokemon's abilities. You may do as many of these actions as you're able to, though there are some limitations. On your first turn, you may not attack, play a supporter card, or evolve a Pokemon. Also, you may not evolve the same Pokemon more than once per turn. Attacking will conclude your turn, so be sure that you've carried out any actions before moving to this step. As we covered earlier, each Pokemon will have an energy cost beside its attack, and you must have the proper amount attached to it in order to successfully carry out that attack. Because many Pokemon have multiple attack options, you must announce the chosen attack before calculating the damage dealt. Remember to take into account any weakness or resistance before applying any damage counter to a Pokemon. When a Pokemon is knocked out, it's placed into the discard pile along with any energy cards or tools attached to it. After you've dealt the final blow to one of your opponent's Pokemon, you can claim a prize card. The player whose Pokemon was knocked out chooses a Pokemon on their bench to become active. If there are no benched Pokemon for your opponent to choose from, you win the game. Speaking of winning the game, there are currently 3 ways to do so. Be the first player to claim all of their prize cards, knock out all of your opponent's in-play Pokemon, or your opponent runs out of cards in their deck and can no longer draw when prompted. Pokemon has a plethora of introductory products that were created with new players in mind. To get started, my recommendation is Pokemon Battle Academy. These decks are constructed using some of the newest cards, and players can expect a fun and steady learning experience. Thankfully, you can find these and hundreds of accessories like card sleeves, deck boxes, and organizers at GameNerdz.com. I'll post links in the video's description. Well, that does it for today's video. If you enjoyed this kind of content, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future tutorials, pack openings, and more. Once again, my name is Parker, and I want to wish you luck on your journey to become the very best, like no one ever was.